Hello, everyone. How the hell are we doing? I am back with another James Bond review. Of course, talking about Moonraker, which is the 1979 James Bond film directed by Lewis Gilbert. I really hope we get some people in the live chat tonight because I'm like on top of the world right now, honestly, after seeing this film. Well, number one, getting the chance to see it on the big screen. Moonraker being one of my favorite Bond movies, unironically, actually, one of my favorite Bond movies. I don't know how people feel about this in the Bond community. I'm pretty sure a lot of people really like it, whether it's a guilty pleasure, they find it quite charming, quite fun, which, it's all of those things. But I don't know. I don't know if some people really kind of shit on Moonraker. I think when this came out, it was very financially successful. But I think reviews on it when it came out were initially mixed. So I don't know. I'm dying on this hill. I absolutely love Moonraker. It's like Temple of Doom. I see so many people slagging off Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, and I don't understand why. Oh, well, maybe I do. The points that they all go. Oh, there we go. I don't know if my mic cut out there. That was a bit awkward. Hopefully, all you guys can hear me. If you are watching, let me know if you can hear me because I don't want to be talking about this film for the best part of an hour, and you guys not being able to hear me. So we're going to power on through anyway. Of course, we are talking Moonraker. Before I do jump into this film, though, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. As of the weekend, big films coming out. I did my review with Caressa on Elvis Presley. Really good review. Had loads of fun talking the new Elvis movie with her. So please do go and check out that review. And of course, if you are here for the James Bond content, I have a whole playlist, 60 years of Bond. You can find all of the previous Bond reviews that I've done. So if you are new to the channel and you're discovering it, go back and check some of those out too. While you're at it, give me a follow on Twitter. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. There I post all the times that I go live, as well as some other random stuff throughout the week. I actually have an unboxing video coming up very soon. Hopefully I can get it out tomorrow. But certainly within the next few days. So I'll be posting pictures on there on my Twitter as well. So that's going to be really fun. And of course, because we're talking Moonraker, let me know what you think of Moonraker. Is it one of your favorite James Bond films? You just see it as a guilty pleasure? Or maybe you absolutely can't stand it. Anything in between, do let me know what you think of this movie. And also, of course, because we are reviewing all of these James Bond films and there's sort of a different James Bond for every generation, really, in many ways. Let me know what your favorite James Bond film is and who your favorite actor to play Bond is, because I'm really, really curious. Of course, next week I'll be talking For Your Eyes Only. So that's literally next week at exactly the same time, 11 p.m. British Standard Time. Right. Okay. Moonraker. My history with Moonraker. I actually think, I would love to have kept a tally of this over all the time that I've been watching these James Bond films. Whether Moonraker is my most watched James Bond film. And I think it's probably a toss-up between that and Casino Royale. I really wish I knew the total for each one. But I've seen this a number of times. I think this is probably like the fourth or fifth time I've seen this one. Compared to a lot of the Bond films, I may have only seen them once. A couple of them I've seen them like 2 or 3 times. This one I've seen a lot of times. I remember watching this from a very young age, actually, bits of it when it was on the TV. Of course, more prominently, last year, I rewatched it again, so it's still fairly fresh. But that being said, there were still a number of bits of this film that I'd completely forgot about for whatever reason. Despite the fact that I've watched it a number of times, I guess some things can just somehow slip through the cracks and just, completely forgot about it, or the fact that there are so many James Bond films that elements of them kind of get crossed, especially because, I'm a relatively new fan to the James Bond franchise. I love Moonraker. I absolutely do, for all the reasons that I mentioned. It's crazy, it's comedic. Right from the opening scene, you know exactly what kind of film you're getting in for. It's incredibly silly in parts. It's very tense in parts. It's got one of my favorite James Bond villains in there with Hugo Drax. The one-liners are just incredible, and the visual effect, this film has it all. It is infinitely rewatchable, and it's such a good feeling film, and kind of tying in with that tonight. And I think why, I literally just got back from the cinema about half hour ago, and I'm still like riding the high of this film. The audience tonight was incredible. And I've kind of wanted this from other weeks. And I guess, pockets of Bond fans in the actual audience, in the actual screening, they're getting involved. People have been laughing at it. People have been cheering and stuff, but not to this level tonight. Everyone was that, they were in it. You could tell they were, the proper fans, the deep cut fans. And it was almost like going to watch a comedy show, when you're kind of soaking up that energy of everyone around you and you're all laughing at the same thing. I sat next to this bloke tonight, and me and him we're almost in sync in many ways as a viewer of this film. And we were kind of preempting the one-liners because we remember them. We know what's coming up. So we're kind of laughing in anticipation for the one-liner or the moment or whatever it happens to be. And then the moment lands and we laugh even louder. It was such a great atmosphere to be in, especially the ending, which without a doubt is one of my favorite one-liners from Q. And it's where they're broadcast. I'm going to be all over the place with this review, guys, by the way. This is just kind of like a stream of consciousness as it is many weeks. It's at the very end of the film where they're broadcasting Dr. Goodhead and James Bond. And I think they say they're broadcasting it to Buckingham Palace. They're broadcasting it to Russia and to the White House. And of course, it's James Bond necking off with Dr. Goodhead. And he's like, Q, what is he doing? And he's like, I believe he's beginning re-entry, sir. Just brought the house down. Like, I've never heard an audience laugh that much collectively, at least at one of these James Bond films. And it was so great. And then, you had people shouting out as well, like, go on, my son, like, give a one for me kind of thing. It's so great. And you know what? I was watching this film and, how tense it is, Bond saving the day at the end, the one-liners, just the charm of it, the fun of it, going to a film, feeling great, the escapism of it. The fact that James Bond is like just, a hero. He's got the gadgets, he gets the girl, he's got the fast cars, and he's going to save the day. And I feel like we need more films like that. I really miss films like that. And that's why, I absolutely love the new Top Gun Maverick film. And thankfully it's doing well. I think recently it's just crossed over $1 billion and it's continuing to make more money. And I would have that film make $2 billion. Like just because I feel like audiences are ready for films like that, and seeing the positive reception of stuff like Top Gun, I really hope that is a wake-up call to the movie studios to make more films like that, almost like a return to form, because this film is just absolutely sublime as a Bond film. It's the completely wacky escapism one. Of course, it depends what you're after from a Bond film, and don't get me wrong. Of course, I like the more dramatic ones. Your License to Kills, of course. I mention that every week. License to Kill, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The ones that are played a little bit more straight. Of course, I like those too. Casino Royale, of course. But I was watching this, and I don't want to harp on No Time to Die just yet, because of course we'll get to that review when we get to it. But when you walk out of No Time to Die, you're just filled with misery and just that somber mood, and such a misstep for the franchise, I think. And do all millennials just need complete nihilism in their movies where everything's just miserable? And this is coming from a cynic. I don't want to compare it too much to the new stuff, because I know there's an audience for the new stuff, and I know there are people that really praise the Craig era as probably the best. I disagree with that, but just you want that feeling of elation of coming out of a Bond film, and it's why it's worked for decades, literally decades, 60 years, of course, 60 years of Bond. I don't want to harp on No Time to Die too much, because that's different review for a different time, but it is worth noting just the complete different feel you get as an audience member coming out of this film compared to something like that. Is Moonraker a step too far going into space? I don't know. I'll let you be the decider of that. I mean, this film, 1979, 2 years after Star Wars, the only reason that this film exists is due to Star Wars. At the end of the credits of the previous, The Spy Who Loved Me, it said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. Well, he didn't, because they squeezed this one in just before For Your Eyes Only. I always laugh at the end credits of this film, where at the end of Moonraker, it's like James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. It's like, we promise this time. It actually is For Your Eyes Only. We're not going to make you wait another film for it. But I mean, I can't be mad at them. I can't be mad at them because the gamble paid off. Star Wars was massive. People hadn't seen anything like Star Wars before. It was, it was familiar. It had like typical character archetypes and everything like that. But in terms of how it was presented, the effects in there, everything like that, no one had ever seen that level of filmmaking before. It completely took the world by storm. Of course it did. And now Disney have their claws in it and continue to milk it forever, milk that Star Wars teat for all it's worth. So, it was a gamble. They were kind of piggybacking off the very popular sci-fi craze at that moment after the release of Star Wars. And it's a gamble that certainly paid off because it was the highest grossing Bond film all the way up until GoldenEye. It made just over 210 million at the box office on a budget of 34. So this film made an absolute killing. So, but the Bond franchise has always done that. It's always been very reactionary to trends. Even going back a couple of weeks where we talked about Live and Let Die, aping off the, like the blaxploitation era, which is why I love that film. It's great. And it has like that really unique style to it. You could even say with the Daniel Craig era as well, the very kind of somber, postmodern, dark, Christopher Nolan kind of feel to a lot of the films. They move with trends. They very much do. Skyfall, pretty much for all intents and purposes, beat for beat, is almost The Dark Knight. You can draw a lot of comparisons between those films, I think. Where do I even start with Moonraker? Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the opening scene. Without a doubt, the pre-title sequence to this film is easily one of the most impressive sequences in all the Bond films, and maybe even just like action movies in general. I remember watching this properly last year, and I'd already seen Moonraker, of course, before that. I'd already seen it like two or so times before that, but it had been many years before. And when you're watching a lot of Bond films in all quick succession, especially as a newcomer, they all kind of blur into one, and it's only from multiple viewings where you can really differentiate them, and you kind of treat them as individual properties more. And watching it last year, the opening sequence blew me away. I was watching it and thinking, like, how the hell did they film this? It's of course it's the skydiving scene, isn't it, with Bond and Jaws and the assailant on the plane. It blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And just the fact that all of it's in camera, I know some of the close-ups where you actually have Roger Moore and Richard Keel and everyone, they're just on a blue screen, they're on a soundstage. I get that. I know why you have to splice that in. And yeah, at some point, the stunt doubles they use, especially when it's blown up on a big screen, you can very much tell that they're stunt doubles and not the actual actors. Of course, as an audience member, they're not the actual actors, but it works. But, like the cameramen, like also doing that jump with them, side by side with them, the fact that there is no CGI, there's a bit of blue screen, as I mentioned, in some of the close-ups, but when it pulls back to the wide shots, that's all in camera. And I think they did like 88 skydiving jumps to do that. They devised the parachute to go underneath the suit that would open up and unfurl out. Like really groundbreaking stuff with this. And I don't see enough people talking about this sequence. Of course, when we get to the 90s, you have stuff like Point Break, which does a lot of skydiving sequences, which are equally as impressive as this one. But I mean, this was like done all the way back in 79, and it's amazing. It really, really is. And then it ends very silly. It's kind of like an awkward transition, I guess, into the Shirley Bassey theme, but I love it. As I say, it kind of sets the stage. It's like, right, we're going to be bringing you awesome James Bond action, which it absolutely does. We're also going to have some fun with it as well. So Jaws falling through a big top of a circus, and this won't be the last time that we see a circus, especially in the Roger Moore era. So give it a couple of weeks when we talk Octopussy. Also one of my favorite James Bond films. We're going to be coming back to the circus in a positive way. And yeah, then we segue into the music. So considering I'm at the opening title sequence now, I may as well talk about the music. John Barry returning and just returning to this all guns blazing. The soundtrack to this film is absolutely sublime. Let's talk the Shirley Bassey theme then. So apparently they were looking for Frank Sinatra. I know that he was considered for the vocals at one point. I think actually this is quite topical at the moment. Kate Bush, is she still at number one with Running Up That Hill? I feel like now with Stranger Things, there's going to be that crowd, isn't there? There's going to be the crowd that knew running up that hill and Kate Bush before it was cool, and then the crowd afterwards now that have discovered it through Stranger Things. But hey, you know, the main thing is they're discovering that song. Kate Bush was asked to do the theme for this film, but she declined. And I think actually getting Shirley Bassey in was kind of like a last minute decision. Like, it was very much down to the wire. I think they were like a couple of weeks out from release, maybe, or from the edit, and they didn't have a song. You know, they didn't have a vocalist for it. So they got Shirley Bassey in, and Bassey mentions that she doesn't have a close-knit relationship with this song as an artist because she was kind of drafted in really last minute. So she didn't really get a lot of time with it. I don't think sort of like the Bond estate or anything like that really pushed the song in terms of marketing, and I don't think it did all that well in the charts, to be honest, compared to obviously some of the other Bond themes that had come out before. But I absolutely adore this theme. I really do. You know, if you ask me which out of the three, which is the most classic Shirley Bassey Bond song, you know, I'm going to say Goldfinger. That was kind of the Bond song that started it all. I know that you had Matt Monro from Russia with Love and, you know, other songs sprinkled in here and there, but that was like, we need the musical number at the beginning of the film kind of thing. So that's the most classic. Which would I listen to more out of Goldfinger or Diamonds Are Forever? I'd probably listen to Diamonds Are Forever more because that's another cracking theme. But honestly, I think chief among them, even above those two, the Shirley Bassey Bond song that I listen to the most, not counting No Good About Goodbye, which to me is my headcanon song for Quantum of Solace, although I know it isn't. I listen to Moonraker. This is like the most melodic one for me. I absolutely love it. It's graceful, it's gentle, and it really fits the romantic side of Roger Moore's character and just the serenity of space. You know, like if you compare it to like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and there are very much some 2001: A Space Odyssey moments in this film. You know, that film's accompanied by classical music, and to me, classical music just goes so well with space. It's, you know, just so elegant and magical and majestic almost, and I really feel like Shirley Bassey brings that through in her vocals, and of course the melody itself composed by John Barry. And not to mention that, but my favorite thing about the Bond themes is always when they utilize the main theme in the orchestra somehow, in the actual score of the film. And whenever that plays, albeit sparingly, but when it kicks in, especially towards the beginning of the film where they're at Drax's estate and it almost serves as the romance theme, it's just absolutely gorgeous stuff. It really is. And I get the same thing as well when you get to A View to a Kill. Because I remember that is easily, I think that's probably my number 2 favorite James Bond theme is A View to a Kill. I think it's a lot of people's favorite, actually. And, you know, hearing that song for the first time and how it's, you know, it's kind of, you know, like a hard rock song pretty much, you know, Duran Duran, a lot of synth and everything. It's fresh out the 80s. I kept thinking, like, how can Barry take this melody and weave it into a Bond theme, you know, like in terms of the score? And by God, he does it. And it's just so romantic and just works and completely changes the feel of the song. And that's what I kind of get with Moonraker as well. You know, when it kicks in the score, it's just beautiful. It sounds like really soppy, but it almost brings a tear to your eye in many ways. It really does, because it's such a romantic theme. And then you get the wonderful variation of it as well at the very end of the credits, where you get a disco version and it's really upbeat. And, you know, we're at the tail end of the 70s now, very much into disco, moving into the 80s. So, of course, we get a disco version, right? And I love that version too. I really do. You know, that's like the commercial release version, I guess, of the song that probably get more airtime. I mean, what else can be said for Roger Moore at this point? You know, the guy is on fine form. He is Bond to me. He very much is. I feel like a broken record every single time I say this each week, and I promise not to try and say it all the time. I might say it next week because we're into For Your Eyes Only, and I think there are more comparisons there for that. But, you know, Dalton is my favorite performance of Bond from License to Kill. I don't think you can get better than that performance. I really don't. But my favorite Bond, like when I come back to these Roger Moore films, the Roger Moore era, just feels like coming home every single time I watch them. Don't get me wrong, I love Connery, you know, Brosnan's great as well, and, you know, Lazenby, for the one film that he did, it's a really good standalone piece, but the Roger Moore films, they're just something special. I think it's my favorite era of Bond, the Roger Moore era. It kind of stands to reason that he's the longest. Well, is he the longest serving Bond now? I can't actually remember. I think it might be Daniel Craig technically, but I know that I count it as Roger Moore because Roger Moore did more films, didn't he? He did 2 more films. Okay, let's go to the Bond girl of this then. So Dr. Holly Goodhead, which got a big laugh out of the audience, and one of my favorite one-liners in this as well is where Bond just goes in with the preconception that anyone with the title of Doctor has to be a guy. So when he comes, face to face with Holly Goodhead, he's like, a woman. And that was like an example of one of the lines that I was preempting because it's one of my favorite one-liners out of all the Bond films. It just cracks me up every time. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Of course, now by today's standards with films, we couldn't have a line like that in there. It's like, oh, of course women can be doctors, and it's like that's the point. Bond is like an old fossil. He's so archaic, he just can't comprehend that anyone with the name of Doctor, is anyone other than a guy. So yeah, Holly Goodhead, played by Lois Charles. I like the concept of this character. I like how she's very sassy. She's very fiery when it comes to Bond. She's out on her own agenda, and it's not too dissimilar from some of the character archetypes that we've had with other Bond girls as well. Especially even the film previous with Agent Triple X, for example. I kind of like her character. I was kind of lukewarm on her character last year, and I guess I still am a little bit. And I think a lot of that comes from the performance, actually. Lois Charles, I don't believe her when she's like. There's a line, for example, where James Bond walks into the room and greets her after they've been kidnapped, and she just goes, "James," and she says it like that. There's just no power or passion. There's no believability in a performance. Almost, she just seems really kind of bored and monotone and one note. I don't know if I'm way off base on that. I don't know if a lot of people like Holly Goodhead's character. And as I say, I don't necessarily have a problem with anything with the character itself. It's mostly just sort of like Lois Charles' performance for me. She just seems like she's really not feeling it. Like almost all of her takes were done in like one take and they just kind of left it. She's, as I say, James. If you know the scene, you know the scene that I'm talking about. Especially when they're in the rocket at the end. And I mean, I'm going to talk about that scene separately because that's easily one of the best scenes in the whole film, is where Bond's got to shoot down the 3 weapons of mass destruction, I guess, like the biological warfare that are about to crash land on Earth. And she's like, James, this is your last shot. I can't hold this course for much longer. And she just seems really bored. She doesn't seem like she's invested in the scene or the moment or the emotion of what the character should be feeling in that moment. I don't know. That's just me. And I was hoping I was going to be won over a little bit more on a character, and I guess I still wasn't, even after this rewatch. Let's talk the villains then. Let's talk the villains, because my God, this is easily going to be the biggest section, because there's a lot of villains in it, and they're all really good in this. So let's start with the main head honcho in this one. So we've got Michael Lonsdale playing Hugo Drax, easily one of my favorite Bond villains, without a question of a doubt, like probably top 3. He's fantastic. He's kind of, he's stoic, but he's still kind of campy. He has some of the best lines of dialogue in this film as well. It's like, look after James Bond, make sure that some harm comes to him. I love how deadpan he is, and just the way he talks, the way he carries himself. And as I say, like he's very Shakespearean in terms of like, the way that he talks. I love his speech of address to like everyone on the space base at the end, where he's kind of saying like, I'm going to be a god, and your children will look up to the heavens and know that God exists. I can't remember what he says exactly, but he's an absolute nutcase that wants to create like a new civilization, just wipe out life on Earth as it is, and just repopulate it in his own perfect image kind of thing. Yeah, complete God complex. And it's such a fun villain. He's just absolutely great. And, he does actually get some really good villainous moments in this film, mostly in the first half where they go to his estate. I love his introduction scene, how he's playing the piano, and he's very sort of, straight-laced. And, as I say, like the way he carries himself, the way he talks. It's a wonderful villain, really good back and forth with Bond. And then, you get to like the bits where they're shooting pheasants and shooting grouse and everything like that. And, it's good sport, Mr. Bond, and then Bond shoots the guy in the tree. and that got a cheer out of the audience as well. It's nice to hear that with audiences though, where they've got their hero on screen and they can cheer when the when the hero does something great. That's why we love stories. That's classic storytelling. That's the hero in the stories we want to be inspired by. We want to champion our hero on screen, and I feel like in many ways we need more films like that. I was going to say we need more heroes, and then I realized that we're very much living in the superhero age of cinema. But you don't really get those vitriolic feelings a lot of times, or at least I don't. Probably not since since Avengers Endgame maybe had some certain bits like that of heroism. And then, as I mentioned, like recently, which I can't sing its praises enough, Top Gun Maverick. It's just I like films like that where you can cheer on the hero. But one of my favorite scenes, actually, and the whole mood and the whole tone and even kind of the cinematography of the film changes. It's where he releases the dogs on, oh God, I've forgotten her name, Corrine. And he says, like, your services are no longer required, you're fired kind of thing. And she starts running into the woods and he clicks his fingers and he gets his dogs ready. And then he basically sicks the two dogs on her. And the whole music in that scene and the way it's shot, it's almost like a horror film, with these dogs pursuing her through the woods and then pouncing on her and eating her alive. It's quite a horrific scene, and it really sticks with you as well. Just the way the camera moves, the use of slow motion, it feels very artsy. It's almost like a different director took over just specifically for this scene. There's so much style behind it. And, when the dogs pounce on her and the camera raises up and you get that sort of like death toll bell in the soundtrack, it really sticks with you as a scene. And that was a scene that had stuck with me from last year. And I was really looking forward to when it was getting to that scene to revisit that scene and seeing how it went over on the big screen. And if that mood did carry, and, it absolutely does. It's such a change of pace, but it's really stylized. And it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the film, actually. That and the ending where Bond's trying to shoot the weapons down, because I love the tension in that scene. John Barry's music in that scene in particular. And I feel quite bad. I've never actually listened to a Bond soundtrack just on its own as a standalone soundtrack. So I don't know the names of the tracks that some people probably do. But whichever piece of music plays when, it's like this slow rhythmic building one. It's like, da, 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 da. Da, 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 and it like crescendos and it builds, and it's fantastic. I love it. I love the space stuff in this. And actually, this kind of brings me, I will come back to the other villains, don't worry, because there are some more villains. But the way this film looks, 1979, this still absolutely holds up than a lot of films nowadays. I'm referring mostly to the space stuff at the end, because you can absolutely tell that's where the majority of the budget went. And there's such a thing to be said about the use of models and props and, real tangible, basically things shot in camera, especially when it comes to space stuff. Prolific space films that you'd had before this were 2001: A Space Odyssey, which gets very nicely referenced with the trumpet that announces James Bond when he rolls up into the car. But again, that film looks outstanding. Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it's, the use of the models and everything that they built in there, like the miniatures and the bigatures. Because it's actually in camera, the way that you light it, it's always going to hold up way better. It's always going to hold up way better because you're filming it in camera. Nowadays, if you were to film that space base, there's no way that they would have built that. It would have all been CGI. It might have been very good CGI, but it would have still been CGI nonetheless. So, when that base is exploding and everything's going to shit, they're actually blowing up a real model with that. And it looked outstanding on the big screen. I'm not just saying that. It really genuinely held up the visual effects of this film. Did it win an Oscar or was it nominated? It was nominated. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Yeah, damn right. Quite rightly so. The visual effects in this film are outstanding. I love the reveal of the space base as well. It's built up so well. It's not on radar, and you kind of see a little bit of a silhouette on it out of sort of like the sun's rays, and then as it orbits and the sun comes behind it, you really get you take in the scale of it. It's such a fantastic reveal. Is it a bit Death Starry? Yeah, of course it is. It's got a laser that can shoot down things, but as I mentioned, this film was made off the back of Star Wars. The only reason that this film exists, or at least came out at the time it did, was because of Star Wars. Even the lasers and stuff, when you've got the two groups, the two armies of astronauts essentially firing at each other. We've seen that in a lot of Bond films before, especially Thunderball, where you have the two armies of divers. You see it with the two armies, with like the ninja army and the people in Blofeld's base in You Only Live Twice. We saw it last time, The Spy Who Loved Me, with the Marines and everything, the submarine crews. So it's a staple of the James Bond franchise to have two opposing armies, but the visual effects on those laser bolts and when people's suits are exploding and they're flying into space, I can't stress enough how good it looked on the big screen, and it genuinely really did. When that base is blowing up at the end, and you've got like the connective tubes and pipes, and they're kind of crumpling and buckling, like it's great stuff. It really, really is. So, sorry, cycling back to the villains a second. And as I mentioned, that there's certain elements of this film that I'd completely forgot about. And for some reason, I completely forgot about Char. Toshiro Suga, is it? Sugar? Probably not Sugar. Toshiro Suga's character, Drax's henchman. I'd completely forgotten about his character. Completely forgot about it. So when this like random martial art guy showed up, I was like, this feels really random in the film, but he's really cool and gets some of the best fight scenes within the film. I love the bit where Bond goes to the oh god, I've forgotten the name of it. It's not centrifuge. Yeah, centrifuge, that's it. That is some great tension in that scene, and that's why I can't stay mad at this film. Like, I don't get why people dislike this film if they do. It's got some genuinely like really good tension in there when Bond gets into the centrifuge and Char like cranks it up. It's very reminiscent, although not as silly as the spine stretcher from. Is that from? It's from Thunderball, isn't it? I think that's from the beginning of Thunderball. See, I'm already forgetting. Where someone's cranking up the speed and Bond's in like genuine jeopardy and could die. It's the same with this, but I love the way that it's shot. Obviously, the footage is sped up and everything like that, but it's a great use of Bond's gadget, like the gun watch that he has. And I love the way that Roger Moore plays that as well. Like when he gets out of the centrifuge and, he's like holding on to her for help and he can barely walk and he's like holding himself against the wall. It's just a really effective use of like the editing and the tension during that scene. And genuinely you think like, well, how's Bond going to get out of this? But Bond always finds a way, damn it. Bond will always find a way to get out of a situation, which is why I have so many problems with No Time to Die. But this isn't a review for No Time to Die. I promise, guys, we will get to No Time to Die. And obviously, because I'd forgotten about this character, I forgot that he has the fight in the museum, in the glass museum, which was hilarious. I love how everything in that room is set up beforehand, where you've got the tour guide and she's saying, they've got all these priceless pieces of glass and artifacts and everything. The sword as well. It's going to come up again. But I love how it's all set up. And then when it does actually happen, and all of this stuff's getting trashed, it's hilarious. They put each other through so many goddamn shelves and just knock everything over. Bond gets the sword. I actually forgot that he uses the sword in this because I guess the moment in my mind that's still fresh in my mind of a moment where he is fencing or is using a sword is from Die Another Day, which is going to be a very interesting review when we get to that film. I'm already like looking forward to, in a way, like so many Bond films. I need to remain present and appreciate the Bond film that I have for each week. But it's a great action scene, and sort of like going back to the way it's shot and the cinematography, the lighting where he fights him in the clock face as well is really striking. These blue, it's almost like a blue hue to the footage, and then you've got the beautiful yellows coming through from the clock face. It's a great place to stage a fight scene, and then obviously he gets put through the clock face, doesn't he? But just the way that scene looks, they didn't need to dress the scene like that. They didn't need to make it look like that, but it was so visually striking to me, and it stood out to me, which is why I'm commenting on it now. Okay, let's get on to the main one. The guy who actually has like a full, complete character arc in this one, and it's just really endearing and really charming and incredibly silly, but we all loved it in the screening tonight, at least. You got Richard Kiel returning as Jaws, completing his character arc, I guess, as henchman from the previous film, The Spy Who Loved Me. And, you know, from the opening scene, as I mentioned, they set the stage of what you can expect from Jaws' character in this, and that he's not to be taken as seriously as he was in the previous movie. But I mentioned this in my review from last week, that Jaws does have some very silly, funny scenes in The Spy Who Loved Me. He's not completely, you know, villainous and straight-laced all the way through. There's the bit I mentioned from last week where he's in Egypt and he picks up that boulder and then he drops it on his foot and he kind of reacts like, oh, you know, that's slapstick. It's comedic. So to me, it's not much of a springboard from how Jaws was in that first film into this one. And it is very silly when he lands in the big top. You know, he's dressing as a clown during Carnival, and you know, he gets a girlfriend in this with Dolly. And I think I mentioned this last time, but there's a very weird thing with films. It's, you know, the Mandela effect, where you and sort of like a collective fan base believe that something happens in a film, but when you watch it, it actually doesn't happen. And I always had this with Dolly for some reason. I remember watching it on VHS. So maybe it was kind of the quality or the tracking on there. I don't know. I always thought the character of Dolly had braces. And I thought that was one of the reasons that she connected so much with Jaws. You know, when they smile at each other, he's got like all metal grills in. And when she smiles, she's got metal braces on. And I don't know why I always thought that. And then I think I remember doing some reading, and a lot of people remembered her having braces. So it's kind of funny how the mind works like that. So at least I'm not the only one. I mean, if anyone else experienced this, then please do let me know. But it's just really endearing, that whole relationship. They didn't need to put it in there. It's very silly where you have, you know, the sweeping romantic strings kick in when they lock eyes with each other and it's love at first sight. But, you know, when they're on that, you know, the wreckage of the base at the end, and he picks up the Bollinger and pops the cork with his mouth, and here's to us, the one and only time that you get to hear Jaws speak. Of course, they write it into the film where they say that, oh, you know, Jaws and Dolly are going to be fine. I actually think it would have been really kind of poetic and kind of sad in a way, but kind of really sweet if they hadn't have made it back to Earth. Maybe that's the cynic in me right there, isn't it? That's like the Daniel. If if Dolly and Jaws were in the Daniel Craig era, they wouldn't have made it back to Earth, would they? They would have burnt up in atmosphere or died or something, or just gone off into the vast recesses of space. But I like they write it in. You know, it has to be a happy ending for everyone. And, you know, Jaws does come around. He does have a character arc at the end. He gets the girl, and he saves Bond in that moment. And I think it's earned as well. I think, you know, getting to that point, I like when Bond kind of gets into Jaws's head, where he says to Drax, so if someone doesn't fit your quota of being physically, you know, perfection, you know, in terms of physical looks and everything for his new empire, is he just going to kill them, you know, have them exterminated? And Drax is like, oh, of course. And then Jaws kind of reflects on it there. So I actually quite like how that's set up. And I think that's quite a believable way that Jaws would kind of come round. And fight on Bond's side at that point. Let's see, any other characters that I want to talk about? Yeah, there was actually. I want to talk about Manuela, Emily Bolton's character. I really like Manuela. She's Bond's contact in Rio. Of course, Bond gets off with her because he has to. That's a rule with James Bond. But, you know, watching it, especially with the mindset now of No Time to Die, one of the best things in No Time to Die for me, and I know a lot of people have mentioned this, is Ana de Armas's character, who literally shows up in the film for about 10 minutes, and you really wish that she was the main Bond girl because she has great chemistry with Bond, and she's fun, and, you know, she's spunky and she's lively. And I was kind of reminded of her character watching Manuela tonight. She's just a really cool character. I like her, and she's not in the film all that long. As I say, she's just his contact in Rio. But played brilliantly, you know, Emily Bolton. And yeah, I think I mentioned last year, actually, when I watched this film, that I really liked Manuela, but I don't think I harped on it all that much. And I guess I'm not going to harp on it loads now, but she's a nice, welcome character to the film. I like it. Let's talk some of the other scenes that come to mind as well, that really make me laugh or that I really enjoy. The whole Venice scene is very silly. I'd say that's the silliest scene in the film for me in many ways. The whole gondola chase. And I will say that's a thing that's there are so many speedboat chases and boat chases with Roger Moore's Bond. Maybe Live and Let Die just kind of did it for me a little bit, but it does feel like familiar territory in many ways when you get to some of those speedboat chases. But one of my favorite side characters in this film and pretty much all of Bond, I love some of the henchmen throughout the Bond franchise, actually. Wait till we get to Dr. Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman's up there. If he's not my favorite, he's very close to it. But I love the random assassin that comes out of the coffin in this. It's this purple lined coffin, and when the lid flips up, this whole armory appears of knives and guns and everything like that. And he's just like throwing knives out of this coffin. It's so theatrically set up, but it's just brilliant. And he's like the worst assassin ever because Bond's right there. He nails like the gondola, the person like pushing the gondola, just kills him outright. But Bond's right there and he can't land it, and then he's just taken out straight away. And of course, the casket closes and hits the bridge, doesn't it, and falls into the water, which is quite funny. This film does have loads of campy moments like that. Oh, another scene I forgot about: the double take pigeon during that same sequence where the gondola gets the inflated thing underneath it and is going through the street, and the really awkwardly edited jump cutted pigeon that's trying to do a jump cut. That was weird. They could have left that out of the film. Yeah, what else? Oh, I'm trying to think of some other scenes. The cable car sequence is really fun. That got a good laugh out of me as well. I love Richard Keel's reaction where they increase the speed of it and he's like, oh, and then he careers through the wall. The snake fight's hilarious to me because it looks like, obviously it's a prop snake they've got in the water, and it looks like the stunt double or Roger Moore, whoever it was doing that scene, is just like wrapping the snake around them to make it look like this flaccid snake is trying to constrict Bond. Great one-liner afterwards. I believe your snake had a crush on me. But that set as well, like a lot of the sets in this film just look absolutely outstanding. As I mentioned, the space base at the end looks amazing. But I really like that Amazonian paradise, really. There's no other word to describe it. You've got the waterfalls and the rock formations and the foliage and everything. It's like a veritable Garden of Eden. I've always loved that. And I think that's one of the sets that's always stuck with me. It just looks great. Is there anything else that I can talk about this film? It's a bit of a shame we've had no one on tonight. I'd have liked to have talked this film with other people. So hopefully me just kind of running my mouth has I don't really know what else I can say about this film. I've covered the music, I've covered the majority of the characters. So I guess, I'll just do like my final roundup on this, like my final thoughts, because I don't want to belabor the episode, this review if I don't need to. Without a doubt, one of the most rewatchable Bond films for me. It's so much fun. It's escapism at its best. It's very silly Bond, when you're getting into this one, Moonraker, Bond going to space. But, if people don't like this film, I guess I can understand it. For some, it might be a bridge too far, but I still think it retains all the ingredients of everything that needs to go into like a good, solid Bond film, in terms of its formula. The action, the music, especially towards the end, is just visually, it's just an absolute spectacle. It's really well done. The wire work and everything for the zero gravity moments. There's some moments of genuine tension, the bit where Bond's trying to, shoot down the 3 weapons at the end. The bit in the centrifuge I really like, and what a kick-ass pre-title sequence as well. With the skydiving, looks outstanding, still looks outstanding to this day. The music as well. I mentioned, John Barry's music and the main theme I really enjoy. This is just a nice Bond film. It's just a really nice, easy watch. Some creative camera moments in there and some creative scenes, like the bit where Drax sets the dogs on the woman. A woman. I love it. And honestly, tonight, it's just made me feel really, really good. And I think a lot of that, not just down to the film, although the film would have done that anyway, but the audience tonight was absolutely electric. And I really hope that continues now. Like, it's the same audience showing up week to week. And I've always said this, like, the Bond community is outstanding. It really is. It's honestly probably the best fan base I've ever seen. I love the Tolkien fan base as well, although I feel like that's going to be very much divided once we get to the Rings of Power TV show. Unfortunately, it's going to go the same route that Star Wars has with its fans, in that it's just completely divided the fan base. But the Bond fans, you know, they're in it for the greatest Bond films and they're in it for the silliest ones. And I think with all the Bond films, in many ways, you can at least find one or two good things about them. Even if you don't like them, there's kind of an acceptance there. And I kind of like that. It's a nice fan base to be a part of. But anyway, that'll do it for my review on Moonraker. So, of course, if you're discovering this review after the fact, do let me know what you think of Moonraker and how you would rank it in terms of some of the other Bond films. And please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. Of course, I'm going to be back each week talking about all of these James Bond films. And indeed, you can find me at the same time again next week, 11 p.m. British Standard Time. That's going to be Tuesday, the 5th of July. My God, I can't believe we're into July already. And I'm going to be talking about, we're into the 80s. We're into the good stuff for your eyes only. That's going to be a very interesting one because I've had sort of very lukewarm to negative responses to For Your Eyes Only on my previous few viewings of it. But I'm really hoping by seeing it on the big screen again and going in, you know, kind of distancing myself from the previous stuff and reviewing it on its own merits, which people have actually recommended for me to do. Last year, they recommended that I do that. That could be a good one. That could be one of the main ones that I have, you know, like almost a complete 180 on. So I guess fingers crossed we'll find out next week. Do follow me on Twitter as well. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. There I post all the times that I go live and some other movie stuff as well. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, you know, obviously other than Bond, I've got an unboxing video coming through and that's going to be a really fun one to do. It's going to feel really good to do that unboxing. It is Lord of the Rings related, I will say, so stay tuned for that. Of course, I'll post when I'm going live for that. And in terms of big releases, I think our next big release, is it next week it comes out? We've got Thor Love and Thunder, which I'll be watching. And there'll be a review for it, so do look out for that. Yep, so thank you guys. I hope you all have a good morning, a good night, a good afternoon, whatever time it is that you're out there watching this, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.